Hi, welcome back to the Spirit Lounge and to the next installment of the introduction to the Upanisads. Let's get straight into the next one. This one's about life eternal. It's the second to the last chapter within the introductory chapter, which is about 160 pages long, by the way. But it's very, very useful to go through. So I just want to go through this with you guys. So this is the life eternal. There is another one called religion straight after this. So let's just jump into straight life eternal. And again, the Upanishads, a large body of work from 700 to 400 BC. The duration was because it was compiled by many, many sages, seers, and spiritual people, seekers, who dedicated their lives to these seeking esoterically of the spiritual understanding of existence. This was the fourth and more esoteric one from the four the Vedas, the four main Vedas, which are Rig, Sama, Yajur, and Atharva Veda, which you can read if you wish, and they contain rites, symbology, prayer, things like that. Whereas these Upanisads is the more esoteric, spiritual interpretation and textual offering of the Vedas themselves. Okay, and these are some of the terms. I won't go through all of these, but this is, you can take a screenshot if you like so you understand these, but there is going to be a video at the end with all of them in there that I've managed to pick up that we will be going through, and some other definitions that we need to understand as we go into the Upanisads proper after today. Okay, let's go into the life eternal. Okay, every human being can rend the veil of separateness of his true nature. This is true. We all have the capacity to render away the veil, which is very thin, between us and divine knowing. And this is into our true nature, which is that of being. In the Brahmanas, the performers of various rites are promised the reward of community of being. Rites are defined in the other four Vedas, but they're also, I would just call this practice. The performance of spiritual practice, those that perform or journey or embark upon the journey in the path of spiritual ascent in whatever manner resonates with you individually, whatever stones and that you wish to tread on to take you through different pieces of knowledge, different paths to knowledge and learning and expansion, continual expansion. That is the path to spiritual awakening and vibrational frequency elevation. These are what you could call rites. Rites is whatever you wished it to be. If that can be indoctrinated practice to more free practice, or it could be free practice and more pragmatic practice from the very beginning. The community of reward is being, which is basically self-awareness. When the absolute Brahman was recognized, the gods became intermediaries through whose influence the end of the unity with the absolute is obtained. So what that means is we can pass through the passage of demigods, of deities, of idols, of representations, of archetypes. We can spend some lifetimes or some time in a life focusing on these things, on these abstractions, if you like. But what it's saying is once we get towards our end within material life, towards moksha, or towards autogenes, as the Gnostics described it, the release from rebirth from matter, then these abstractions or demigods, gods, deities, idols, archetypes, these all their relevance disappears because we move into a much more elevated state of awareness, where I've always said the journey of expansion of grace started with us. It will end with yourself alone. Not alone in terms of loneliness, but alone without the need for archetypes, idols, demigods, and so forth. Brahman and Atman are the highest goal is declared. Brahman is the supreme consciousness. Atman is the divine self. Deliverance is different from existence in Svarga, which is Svarga is a stage in the Loka, which we'll go through. The latter is part of the manifested world. So Svarga is the manifested world. Deliverance is that which is ascending. Deliverance is a state of permanent union. Life eternal is liberation from it. Former is extended. The latter is time transcended. So in other words, we can extend the Svarga, or the attachment to matter, but we can transcend time itself through the elevation of the liberation from that and towards permanent union. Varuna, Indra and Prajapati to Brahman speak of the soul on the pathway to perfection. The Chandogya Upanishad states that the soul of the emancipated at death through the crown of the head, fire, wind and sun to Brahman. In other words, these are the material forces. We reach Brahman, or supreme consciousness. These are put in there, but this is convoluted at best. But effectively, through the crown of the head, which is the uppermost chakra point, and the third eye, this is what expands the most as we move into our spiritual ascent. Through this, the crown of the head and the spiritual third eye, we move through towards Brahman, which is absolute, the absolute consciousness. The moksha, which is the liberation from rebirth. Moksha with the supreme person. There are four aspects of release. The first one it's saying is Simipya, which is intimacy with the divine. Sarupya, which is nature with the divine. Salokya, which is consciousness, coexistence with the divine. And Sayuja, which is communion with the divine. So these are different layers or abstraction. These are different passages, if you like, vibrational passages of frequency, vibrational passages of spiritual awareness and knowing and knowledge, which brings us closer to an understanding of the divinity within us all, and that which is what we are all also within. So you have Sampiya, you have Sarupya, you have Salokya, and you have Sayuja, which is the three aspects of release. And again, we'll touch on this in the last video that we do in the introduction series. Okay, moksha or freedom. Freedom from subjection to time. So in other words, material life is subject to time, subject to linear events, one after another after another. And moksha is a release from the rebirth in matter, in form. Therefore, we are released from time. Birth and death are symbols of time. Yes, they occur within the universal realm, and they are experiences that we experience within the linear aspect of time. We are born in date, time A in year, and we die in date, time, year of B. From laws of karma, we are liberated from laws of karma. Liberation is a destruction of bondage. So in other words, from death we are released from the laws of karma, but not until moksha are we released totally from the laws of karma. Liberation is destruction of bondage, bondage to the material realm. Ignorance is destroyed by knowledge, absolutely. It is, spiritual ascent is actually knowledge. Yes, we have a spiritual experience, we feel that we're connected to some love and pure love and grace that we cannot describe through words of human words, but we can feel it. But that brings what's known awareness. Awareness is knowledge. So in other words, ascent is actually the feeling of absolute knowing, which is knowledge. It's an energetic knowledge. It's not a mind intellectual knowledge. It is spiritual knowledge. It is the divine knowledge, which is energetic, which is vibrational, which is feeling, which is love, which is heart space, which is spirit. This is what the knowledge is. And this is what is the bondage, and is destroyed by knowledge, is the ignorance. Freedom is a result of the recognition of that which we're receiving emotionally through love and through effect, through that feeling attachment to that which we're moving towards vibrationally. Knowledge takes us to the place where desire is at rest, a karma, which in other words means the further we move towards our practice, the least desire-driven, particularly physical desire-driven, lustful desire-driven we become. This is just a nature of it. Apta Kama, which is desire fulfilled, or Atma Kama, which is self, is the only desire. The law of karma prevails in the world of samsara, where our deeds lead us to higher or lower stations. The world of samsara is the world of action, which leads us to higher or lower stations. Now, this doesn't mean incarnation into animal form next time. This is talking about what we discussed in a previous video, which is lower stations is vibrational stations or lokas, which we will go through shortly. These are frequencies of behavior, of perception, of knowing, that which is either attached, moving towards grace, or moving away from grace. So that's what it means by lower stations in the world of time. We obtain Brahma or Atman through deeds. Brahma or Atman deeds have no power over us when we release ourselves. When we obtain absolute, Brahma and Atman deeds have no power over us. Actions inspired by the divine cannot be wrong. The liberated spirit conforms to ethical rules. Every religion sets before us the goal of liberation. It's true. Every religion, no matter what its teachings are, what it focuses you on, it's asking for it's asking for us to move towards what is called Brahma, supreme consciousness. It's asking us to move towards the absolute, which is the divine Godhead or grace itself. It's asking us to recognize Atman, which is our spiritual true self. And this is what the nature of every religion is. Some keep you on certain stones because they're very indoctrinated religions, and they will never allow you to move beyond the focus of a single teaching, and that is stagnation. But the purpose is for us to move away and move, once we've achieved what we can and understood all we need from a particular religion, move to another one if you wish, or move to another stone across the river, which is taking you on your own personal passage towards what it is that we seek. When we are delivered in life, our condition is that of the Jivan Mukta, which is freed from the bonds. Videha Mukti is deliverance after death. The suggestion Krama Mukti, or gradual release. So there's many Sanskrit terms here. So there's a gradual release. Yes, we are gradually releasing. We are deliverance after death means death really is either physical death, but also death can also mean, as the Gnostic texts describe them, death is anyone who's detached and removed and dismissed the nature of the all, the divine grace, from their perception. This is what's called death, not physical death, but death spiritually. So here is deliverance after death. Let's look at it from a spiritual sense. It's deliverance from the ignorance, which is spiritual death. When the outer self is hushed, which is our ego self, our external conscious self, which is ego-driven, our intellectual mind self, our self-virtual, self-righteous external self, is hushed, the deeper layers of consciousness are released into activity. They start to bubble, they start to be felt, they start to manifestly maneuver our lives, actions, words, thoughts and intentions into a beautiful, graceful place, into the silence of the absolute Brahman, which is supreme consciousness. Jnana Valkya, who is a seer, said Brahma is a state where there is no desire and no passion. There is desire and passion, but it's not physical desire and physical passion. It is a divine movement towards grace and a passion and desire to move further and further and further into the absorption into grace. He who knows, which is I am Brahman, becomes the universe. Even the gods cannot prevent him from becoming. Its essential unity with God is unity with one another through God. I like that statement because that's what it is. Once everyone achieves and understands that we are part of the divine all, and that within the divine all is within us, as above so below, through that unity within ourselves, and each person does this, we'll have unity through ourselves through that movement towards grace. This is where it's saying essential unity with God is unity with one another through God. The liberated self has no other overlord, absolutely. Badarayana, which is who is an Indian philosopher, said the soul, it can, if it so chooses, enter into many bodies created by its own will. This is what I was saying. We are not. This is more accurate to the reality. We are enter into incarnational life through our own will, and it's our own will determined by the garment, with the state of the garment within the Akasha in the universe. We came into inception through the divine thought at the very beginning of our being, of our spiritual light. It was pure love, and we entered this universal playground so that the divine experiences itself through us, and we experience the divine through itself. But through free will and possibility and probability, in the stream of possibility and probability and free will and ego, we develop duality, we move ourselves away from that divine inceptual state. This is what changes our energetic garment, which resides in the Akasha of this universe. And that is what we are challenged to bring back towards the state of grace from which we entered into this universe. To, in other words, change our energetic garment in the Akasha back to what it was when in our initial inception, through the being of thought from the divine itself. And until that our garment is transformed, this will release us from rebirth. This is what moksha is all about. This is what autogenes is referring to in the Gnostic scriptures. This is why we create our own bodies, we create our own lives to come back and change this garment. This is the purpose of incarnation. This is why incarnational life exists. We don't need incarnational life. We are doing it to move back into our state of grace. This is ultimately what it is. The passages of the Upanisads, which make out that the reward of enlightenment is heaven, in one form or another, have in mind co-residence with Brahman or Hiranyagarbha, which is the creative god or the archetype that exists. Okay, so this is the lokas. We'll go through those in a moment. Okay, so in our transfigured consciousness, where our egoistic individuality is absent, we are not divided from others, but feel one with them. No more individual mental being, our spirit fills the whole world. It's true. Spiritual wisdom, which is Vidya, does not abolish the world, but removes our ignorance, which is avidya. Act in the world with a different outlook. So as we create more spiritual wisdom, which is knowledge, through knowledge, we change our perceptions in this world, which is the different outlook, and therefore our understanding of reality changes. Our actions, words, thoughts, and intentions therefore change, and through those changing patterns and tendencies that we've established, we change our own personal duality of experience, and therefore together, in the culmination of those things, starts to transform our garment, the energetic divine garment that exists within the Akasha. And once that is changed back to light, we achieve moksha, which is the release from rebirth. Birth is a becoming of the supreme in the cosmic being, a release of bondage. Bondage is in the persistence of the ignorant self, of the separate selfish ego. And that's right. A released being, he may assume birth or the purpose of helping the world. So this is what they're saying here is that a released being can release itself and not return to the earth, or it could come back to the purpose of helping the world. Now this can be obtained to avatars such as Jesus or Krishna, who didn't come here for karmic reasons, didn't come here because their garment was dulled by material influence and separation and duality. They came as ascended beings to pass on a reminder and a message to humanity for itself to understand and return and share with each other and return to grace. They wouldn't come to create religions. Humanity created religions themselves around these teachings. The soul is eternal, inheritor of the previous person. in other words, an Akashic footprint. It does inherit the previous person. It inherits the garment in which we leave here. It lives in flesh, but not after flesh. I would say the Akashic garment. The freed soul does not aim at the improvement of humanity, but his life itself is a service. So these are the upper and lower lokas. So remember we talked about these before. And this side, we can see the Satya Loka is the upper loka. So this is where we start to go up into the vibrational realm, the create. This is the very upper level of the lokas. There are different representations of this, by the way, but because it was mentioned in this and the previous section, I thought I'd put it in here. But this is where we these are the states of frequency in which we can attach. Obviously, the very end is demons and snakes, fallen souls. This is where serpent energy. This is the demonic and satanic areas down here where all the various tendencies and patterns of behaviors and attractions come in. But then we can move into the upper lokas, which are more towards the divine grace itself. So I don't particularly follow these lokas because they're too abstract. I mean, for example, we've got the Satya Loka, which is the creator, and we have the desires Loka. Well, actually, this the desires Lokas could be interpreted as material desires, but this is desires to for knowledge, additional divine knowledge, not necessarily desires. We don't have demigods here. If we have ascended spirit, the demigods should be further down into the realm of worlds, in actual fact. So I don't agree with the layering of these lokas, and the way too abstractive, but they're good for knowledge and understanding. But there are other other representations of ascent that are available out there, which are less abstract than the lokas themselves. Okay, Samkara, who is another a sage, says, "For we are his offspring. Those who have attained life eternal live and wander about in the world, to all appearances like ordinary mortals. They wear no special signs, respectful to the unliberated, with unsatisfied minds. For the liberated soul, samsara and moksha or nirvana, as the Buddhists call it, is time and eternity. The phenomenal and the real are one. Liberated soul lives in the world of becoming. He lives with his consciousness because it is centered in God." So this is talking about, for we are his offspring, we are the offspring of grace. And those who have attained life eternal live and wander about in the world. So you don't know, there's no one who goes around, if someone is attaining a spiritual ascent or a spiritual position of moving towards grace, there's no ego. We'll never know. Anyone who particularly says that they are a supreme ascent may need to question that there's more ego than reality. They wear no special signs. You could say the avatars of Krishna and Jesus wore no special signs. They were respectful to the unliberated, which this means those that we call ignorance, or those that we refer to as dead, i.e. spiritually detached and misaligned. And the liberated soul achieves moksha or nirvana, which is from samsara, the world of action. After liberation, one takes on active interest in the world or renounces it is a matter of temperament. So it's basically saying after we liberate or achieve moksha, we can renounce the world or we can come back as in service. But it's dependent on our free will or how our temperament, our nature that we develop. Spirit and material existence, Ananda, which is referred as bliss, and Anna, which is referred as matter, are the highest and lowest rungs. So bliss is ultimate elevation. Anna is the opposite, which is attachment to matter. There is a link between the two because we achieve bliss through the experience of matter. Eternal divine holds the whole universe within itself. Soul that is one with the eternal possesses the same poise. So it's saying that our soul that is one with the eternal possesses the same poise, which means we are the same as the divine itself, because it is within us. We possess the same poise. That's what that means. The perfected soul cannot look with indifference on the sufferings of the imperfect. Work to lift them into freedom. This is not preaching, so I would avoid and suggest and recommend that one does not preach to another. Yes, we are here to assist others, those who are willing to, who are on the passage and who are seeking spiritual awareness, if we are able to provide it. And this is what means that we don't look indifference to others. We seek to help and assist those who are seeking, but not to go around preaching to those who are not ready to receive nor want to receive. This is really needs to be done with discernment. Brahma Loka is the widest possible integration. So this is the very top Loka. Now this doesn't have it in here, but the Brahma Loka, it sits above here. But this is a Satya Loka, which I would call the Brahma Loka. Is the widest possible integration. Brahma is the soul that ensouls this great dwelling. Beyond it, there is nothing in the manifested world. So Brahma Loka is where we achieve moksha. We achieve an ascent sufficient enough within the supreme consciousness. We achieve a supreme consciousness which is elevated to a sufficient level that we achieve moksha, which is then anything beyond it we don't find within the material realm. Therefore, we release ourselves from it, and our eternal journey progresses beyond the realm of matter. The farthest limit of manifestation, the world receives its consummation. Delivered from time to eternity, the alone to the alone, the plan of God. So what he's talking about is the world receives its consummation when all that exists within this realm. Let's just talk about the world, the humanity, achieve Brahma consciousness, and therefore the world receives consummation. In other words, it has served its purpose. The service has been achieved. We go from the alone, which is isolated, detached from the divine, to the alone, which is the spiritual singularity within us, our divine connection through ourselves to the all, which is the plan all along. In the Brahma Loka, the liberated individuals present to each other as one. Consciousness of the Supreme, which is logged in the Buddhi, is one. The Buddhi is the spiritual divine self, similar to the Atman, until the final return of the whole universe into the Absolute. Of course, the passage of everything is to return into the All. Everything in the universe that is of duality returns itself into the Brahma consciousness and into the Absolute. When that happens, duality disappears, because then it no longer exists. It only exists because life within the universe manifestly creates it. Okay, that's the end of the life eternal. And again, practice, become, and transformative. Spirituality is up to you. Need to become that yourself, as stated by myself, and also Mahanji's statement, comment, which is true spirituality is transformative spirituality, that which transforms you. We follow rituals, we follow gurus, we follow various activities, but unless transformation happens in life, it is just an activity. Absolutely. Okay, and any suggestions you'd like me to go through, or any comments on what I'm doing, please send to thespiritlarge333@gmail.com. Feel free. And this is the book that I have on Amazon, which is a foundational book. It covers much of what I go through in all of my videos since 2019. If you're interested, feel free to jump into grabbing that for yourselves if it's of interest to you. And so thanks so much for listening. It's a little bit dark under this light today. I'm not so sure why that is. But thanks for listening to this. We have one more video and then another summary on Sanskrit terms. And then we'll jump straight into the Upanisads themselves. So I want to say thank you so much for listening. I appreciate your time. It is a blessing for me, to anyone who listens to my videos and gets something from them. And say God bless until next time, and thank you.